Hello everyone, this is Captain Logan. Welcome back to the #1 show. It's time for another introductory comic review for a brand new series. We are already 4 issues into Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man, and I have every intention of talking about the first arc when it's finished, so I wasn't gonna do a #1 review, but I've gotten a number of requests for it, so here it is, in case you're still on the fence about trying it or you're curious to know my feelings. I'm up to date on this series, but I'll just concentrate on the first issue here. And since it's been out a while, I will spoil some things, mostly in the hopes that what I reveal will convince you to try it immediately. I was pretty skeptical of this series after the Free Comic Book Day issue. I really thought that was kind of obvious, overwritten, mired in forced humor, and really been there, done that. So much so that I didn't bother picking up the first issue and only timidly did so after Dan Torrey and a number of other Spidey fans, including people who don't care for Dan Slott's run, sung its praises. I don't know what happened with that Free Comic Book Day issue, but I wish I'd never read it. The first proper issue was like a visit to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's everything I could have hoped for. The arc is called Back to Basics, which sounds like the most predictable thing to call the very next story after Slott exits the book. It reads like a PR ploy. Time to start checking off the boxes for everything Spidey fans miss that Slott didn't give them and that turned them off from reading his run. And that's exactly what Spencer does, but it totally lives up to that promise. It is authentic classic Spider-Man, from the perfect marriage of drama and absurd comedy, to the colorful, splashy, and dynamic artwork, to the standard power responsibility theme, which isn't just paid lip service to, but drives the story with terrible repercussions for bad choices Peter makes, or more accurately, good choices he fails to make. The cornerstone of the Parker philosophy, and also the constant catalyst for that infamous Parker luck, beginning with his failure to stop the burglar who was freed to kill Uncle Ben. And it doesn't read like Peter is a stagnant character who never changes, at least it doesn't here, but that's one of the hardest things about being human, a lesson we're all constantly having to learn and relearn. We're all often tempted to do self-serving things that seem harmless at the time, but might negatively impact someone else in unpredictable ways later. Spencer strikes a good balance between building on what Slott's decade-long stint did with the character and going his own way, careful to get beyond high-tech super genius Parker without outright retconning or disrespectfully poking fun of Slott. It does occasionally read like it wishes it could just ignore some of that stuff, like when Peter talks about working his way up at the Bugle from freelance photographer to science editor. That's not exactly how it happens, right? He did own his own multi-million-dollar corporation in between, and it's not like Spencer doesn't also talk about that. But to be fair, Slott set some of this up himself at the end of his run, and the Marvel Universe at large has certain elements lately bringing it closer to a traditional Spider-Man status quo, like Black Cat no longer being the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk returning to that title despite also being the new mayor, and Jameson going back to the Bugle, Jameson who used to be the mayor. I like that Peter's personal conflict begins with a bombshell he can't explain because of a mistake he made during Slott's run, and it's a really clever way for Spencer to comment on that stuff, again, without throwing Slott under the bus, and use it for legit drama. I haven't read all of Slott's stuff, including most of Superior, so I don't know how exactly it's handled there, but it always bugged me that after Dr. Octopus takes over his body and gets a graduate degree as Peter Parker, Peter just goes with it. He pays for that directly here when one of his old college papers is used to demonstrate a new anti-plagiarism device at his old college, a device that uses, among other things, Cerebrotech to catch cheaters, and the examples of supernatural or paranormal cheating are hilarious. I love the fun but smart way Spencer deals with how a real-world thing like college would have to be different in a world with parallel dimensions and aliens. Peter suddenly loses his credibility and his Bugle job. Again, classic Spider-Man stuff. He's finally back on his feet and relatively happy, despite still having plenty of drawbacks in his life, and not 14 pages in, it all comes crashing down because of choices he's made. It turns out the paper was written by Otto Octavius, who used it when he was, of course, in Peter's body. So Peter isn't guilty of plagiarism, but it's also not like he can explain that, and he is guilty of taking advantage of Octavius's deeds in his body and going along with the line. The scene where Aunt May tells him how disappointed she is in him is a gut punch. She doesn't understand the full situation, but it's also true that he's been benefiting from dishonesty, so her disappointment still kind of rings true to him. Immediately, a believable and authentic Parker dilemma. This issue made me feel like I did reading Spider-Man comics as a kid, and I haven't been able to say that in a long time. Spencer's voice for Peter is spot on, his in-costume banter is well written and funny when it's supposed to be, lame when it's supposed to be, and most importantly, doesn't read like he's just quipping because that's a Spider-Man thing. He uses it tactically or when he's nervous, and it also doesn't read like Deadpool. The in-costume conflict is a big-scale alien invasion that initially seemed too huge for a more grounded, intimate Spider-Man story until I learned what was really going on, and it's funny, but not overly ridiculous, and involves a classic villain I didn't expect. I'll just go ahead and spoil that it's Mysterio. So cool that Spencer gets away with a zillion superhero cameos, which is mostly to throw us off to what's really going on, while the conflict isn't actually whole planet in peril like it initially appears. But there's some nice drama there, and Peter realigning his priorities after losing almost everything and then thinking he might have to die to save the people who have always been there for him. And here's the big spoiler. Chances are you've heard about this already, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. Peter is rewarded by rekindling his romance again, finally, with Mary Jane. Again, a thing I'm not surprised by in trying to win back old fans, and given how much throwback fan service Marvel has been doing lately, but it doesn't seem like a mandate or agenda driven within the story. I completely buy that this is the absolute right moment to do that narratively, the moment Peter would finally make that move. And Spencer made me fall in love with that relationship again. I also appreciate the real estate Spencer and penciler Ryan Ottley get to properly tell a complete story and establish their tone and major players. And it's not padded out. They play in that sandbox to its fullest, and they get plenty of stuff built with that sand, which is a better metaphor, were this a Sandman issue. There's also a fun backup feature about a court hearing for Mysterio, and it sets up Peter's new job working with the Lizard. Don't skip it. I missed it on first read and read issue 2 without it. And it continues to be everything I want from Spider-Man. Classic but updated, absurd but intelligent, heartfelt but not forced and sappy. This does not read like fanfiction. By issue 3, it takes a weird turn and it's almost a straight-up remake of the Star Trek episode The Enemy Within. So if you've seen that, you can probably guess a couple things about it. And I'm curious to see if Spencer can stick the landing with that. But it hasn't lost any of what makes this, for me, the best and closest to what I love about Spider-Man since, I don't know, maybe Ultimate. And the art reminds me of Ultimate too, now that I say that. Spencer has absolutely redeemed himself with this after Secret Empire. We could be looking at the beginning of a great run. No brainer, this is a pull book. Zero question. Thanks everybody for watching, sure appreciate it. If you are ever in the Kansas City area, check out Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas. They've been supporting us for a lot of years, and they are my absolute favorite comic shop. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/Geekvolution, become a patron at just the $2 level, and that'll get you all kinds of cool perks, including our twice-monthly uncensored talk show, Geekvolution After Dark. Lots more coming your way here on Geekvolution this week. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.